All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Just Stories with BT. I say it every week. Oh, I'm so excited for the guest. And I am. I'm always very excited. But this guest in particular is someone who I've known for 15 years, has had a massive impact on my life and so many people I know. And being that season 3 is upon us and we're focusing on authors, I had to kick things off with Hernani Alves, who's now just launched his second book, The Champion Advantage. So welcome to the show, Hernani.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Are you excited or are you enthusiastic? Which one are you?
I think it's like equal levels of both. I can barely contain myself. You know what I mean?
All right,
It's
good,
just
good.
so legit.
That's where I want you. Let's have some fun.
Awesome, man. So for those who don't know Hernani, which I can't even imagine anyone in the world not knowing Hernani, right? So an amazing, successful entrepreneur, an amazing business person, now author, family man. I'm going to introduce you to the world. So if anyone doesn't know Hernani, they're going to know you in like 60 seconds. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So afterwards, tell me what I screwed up, okay? Because I'm sure I messed up somewhere, but I'm going to give it a go. So world, meet Hernani Alves, good friend of mine. Here we go. So Hernani was born in Angola, Africa, where he lived the first few years of his life. And then he had to get over here to the United States by the time he was 6 years old. We're going to come back so you can tell that story. And he spoke Portuguese. So actually English was his second language he learned as a kid. Soccer was a huge hobby of his, no surprise, coming from Africa. But he got really good at it. In fact, in high school, he played football and ran track and did soccer, but soccer was the thing that took off. He even got into an Olympic development organization, even played some semi-pro, which is very impressive. As a kid, when he was growing up, his first job was 9 years old, and that was milking cows, which I've only done once in my life, and I failed miserably. He did his first paying job was newspaper route, which was cool. And your worst job as a kid was a guinea pig farm, which you had in quotes, yuck. So I'm going to come back and ask why it was so gross. So after excelling in high school, we talked about the sports and whatnot. He went to college at Cal State University, Stanislaus, which a lot of people don't know, but it's up in Northern California, near where I grew up. He majored in international business, which obviously you use a lot of business as you grew on. Your first major job out of school was sleep train. But prior to that, when you were in school at 19, you bought a frozen yogurt, basically dessert franchise. And you sold it for 18x 4 years later. So pretty impressive. Nice way to start off your business career. So after graduation, you rolled into Sleep Train. And then you moved up just slightly in the company, ended up becoming the president over Sleep Train and Mattress Discounters, or a mattress firm, which at the time was over $3 billion in value. During that whole time, you met and married an amazing woman, Angie Alves, definitely the better half situation, and had 2 amazing kids, and who are now, high school, college age. And through that, you did a lot of motivational speaking. Once you got out of the kind of shadow of mattress firm, you were able to launch your first book, Balanced Accountability. You were able to become the founder and CEO of Balanced IQ, where you speak and you get businesses obviously heading in a different direction. And then now here you are, you just launched the Champion's Advantage, which I have here on display for anyone looking. Awesome. And the most important part of this book, there's so many good nuggets in it, but I think the most important part can be found in the forewords. And there is obviously one from myself, which very thankful to have that in there amongst all these amazing, great names. And then here you are on Just Stories the BT podcast.
Wow. That was tough to be able to hear all that. But what's even more tough is I feel like I need to get a restraining order against you. That is, you know way too much about me. Whoa.
Oh, man. I know. If only I had reached out ahead of time and gotten all that. Yeah, it wouldn't
you left some of the dirty laundry. I'm kind of glad. That's not like you. I thought you would have thrown a couple jabs. They may come out.
I know. I should have, but I was trying to play it cool. But you should really consider making some of your passwords more difficult to break into stuff. I mean,
yeah. 1, 2, 3 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is. I thought people would get that wrong.
Oh, man. So I love your story. And actually, one of the things I love about your new book, which we'll get into a little bit, is that you kind of tell a bunch of your backstory, which I didn't. I knew a little bit, obviously we go back a long time, but I just didn't know a bunch of it, especially, the parts of coming over and talking about being on the boat. So why don't you just take us back? So you were born in Angola, and then how did you get from there to the United States at 6? What was that journey?
Yeah, so my dad migrated there in 1950. So way before my time. He was 18 years old. Angola was prospering in diamonds and oils. So he migrated there. My mom came from Madeira Island. Of course, they didn't know each other, but he started off poverty. He was homeless for the first few weeks. You know, they don't have like Yelp or Google or Indeed. He can't just go get a job. So he finally landed a trading post. Then he convinced the owner, let me open up my own location. He opened up his own location, started doing well, so well. He went from poverty to the upper middle class, met my mom. And by now they've got 3 trading pros, multiple mechanic shops, a few restaurants, because my mom's a great restaurant. They even had their own plane.
Wow.
And then 1975, I come around and everything goes to heck. And I know you're thinking it was me.
And that's the theme. Yeah, that's kind of.
I know that was. It's like
continue.
By this time, I've got 3 other siblings. But yeah, I was born in June. In September of 1975. Now you might have heard about the Angolan Civil War.
Yeah.
And that was getting really hot. And my dad got the knock on the door, the real super aggressive knock early in the morning, and it was the guerrilla army saying, get out, or they will kill you. And it was one of those where like, okay, do I stay and fight, or maybe I should listen to them? And then we ended up in the Red Cross. Thank God for the Red Cross. We were there for 6 months, again, homeless, fighting for scraps. And then we finally got out of there and came to Azore Islands, where my dad first originally started. So that all, that's kind of, I just gave you a quick little crash course of what happened there. And that's what that inspired the book Champion Advantage. Is it's about maximizing your controllables. There were certain people that were caught up in that. They didn't do very well. Some of them died. Some of them just couldn't get out of the poverty, where my dad and my family had this maximize the controllables, do things that they know, and really continue to maximize that and not focus on all the stuff that's happening exterior that he couldn't control at the time.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people say, that there's people who kind of strike it rich, as an entrepreneur, and there's people who are entrepreneurs and successful because of their drive, their ingenuity, and their ability to just reinvest or rebuild who they are at any given time. And I've heard this quote about, if you were truly successful, if you lost it all, could you make it all back again? And I think that's what's a cool story about, that you must have learned from your dad, especially like, it comes from nothing, built it all up, lost it all. I mean, the amount of, kind of drive you'd have to do it all again, I imagine, was insane.
Yeah. Adversity doesn't freak me out or make me panic. It actually motivates me. And that's really when you as a leader can really take off. I remember what we went through in 2008 at Sleep Train. That was some drastic adversity, but we came out of that so much stronger because we maximized all the things, all the controllables we had. You probably remember the whole stop the bleeding exercise we did, where we got the entire team rallied behind that. So that was awesome. No, it's true. It's my dad. He lost his business in Africa, went to the Azores, started another business. My mom's a really good cook. Then he, at the age of 50 years old, you're not 50 yet, and he's got 4 kids. And my sister, she is 18 at the time. So he's like, I can't keep her here. So he pivots again and brings us to the amazing country, the United States. And he goes to the fish. He's in Monterey, goes to the fish boats, buys the fish that they have left over, turns around and goes and sells it. He was like the Swan Man, kind of going between. He didn't speak the language, but here's a guy that's 3 different countries, doesn't speak the language, and can start a business fairly quick. So he's always inspired me, and my family just has that perseverance. So it's a great quality.
No, absolutely. And let me ask you too, because one thing I mentioned there, which I'd never heard that story of, but I didn't even know, what's this business that you bought at 19? What was it like? What was it?
So being the entrepreneur, all our siblings are entrepreneurs, just kind of runs in the DNA. Here I am coming out of a Save Mart supermarket, and there's this Snowbiz shack. So 8x10, and it says for sale sign on it, and it was closed. So I reached out, they were selling it for $10,000. So 19, I don't have $10,000. I go to my sister and my brother-in-law, and they actually lent me the money, which was still to this day, I can't believe they did that. They lent it to me, and I started opening up, and we started doing well, and we tripled what the volume it was doing before. I opened up a couple more at a couple different Save Marts. The distributor's like, I think I'm going to retire. He's going to move to Phoenix. And then I bought his distributorship for like peanuts, pennies on the dollar, because he didn't have anything. He wasn't doing it. We opened up Raging Waters, Great America, some big theme parks. And then at that point, had an opportunity to sell it for, as you saw, 18. So I took $10,000, converted it to 180,000. And that was my first taste of like, business. It wasn't easy. This was a seasonal job. We opened up from April to October. Sometimes we got lucky till November, but it was seasonal. Yeah. But it just, it was just a shaved ice stand. We brought in frozen desserts, coffee, some different things. We got into the fair circuit. So it was kind of it's amazing the opportunity that's there once you get out and just go get it.
Yeah. And tell me, because I see this a lot, and I actually never hear really good answers. Not that good answers. I just don't think the questions get asked a lot. But, it seems like in so many cases, there's like people who walk up the corporate ladder, and then there's like entrepreneurs, right? And you're one of the few people I know that really seem to excel at both, right? So you started at Sleep Train out of college. It's a full-time career. You're working your way up the ladder all the way to the top of the ladder, right? But at the same time, all throughout, you had that business, you had car wash, you had stuff going on the side. Like how were you able to do that? And what frame of mind do you have to be in to be able to do something like that?
You got to be crazy, I think. Number one. It's kind of looking back.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you already knew that. So it's like, I just validate. You just put a check mark next to my name. Oh, I knew the guy was crazy. So hey, here's the deal. I've made so many screw ups, but I'm okay with it. I am one of the first ones that I've realized I need to fail. And Matt Anderson and I used to talk about this, guy I used to work with. And he's actually in the book, in my first book, Balanced Accountability, Successful Screw Ups. We would get together, Matt and I, and we would debate. Some people thought we were like beating each other up because we would really debate, but they would be done and we would go execute and we were on the same page. But what was cool about working with Matt is we would go, okay, let's throw this out there. Let's do a little bit of your idea, a little bit of my idea, and let's go out there and just roll it out. And we would roll it out. And our goal was to fail fast. So number one, fail fast, do it quickly, fail, debrief, come back, make some improvements, and then now roll it out again and start celebrating these wins because you're going to get some traction. But many times I've seen so many people that don't execute. They don't take action because they're so want to get it perfect. Once you get something about 70%, you'll figure out the other 30% while you're doing it. But get in there, fail fast. That's kind of my, and a lot of the stuff I've done. I have failed pretty quick, but I failed fast and small things that wouldn't completely break the bank.
Yeah. And with that being said, like before we get into Champions Advantage, tell people, because obviously you started Balanced IQ as well, and you had your first book. So give us the 60-second overview of Balanced IQ and kind of what it's all about in that first book before we talk about Champions Advantage.
Absolutely. I've had an amazing career, worked with a lot of great people. And when I left Sleep Train, I kept getting people asked, can you help us get that accountability that Sleep Train had, that culture? You guys were so great. And I was like, yeah, but I'm going to take a few years off. I'm going to spend some time with my family. Last year on the road, I was like 140 some nights. And I was like, okay, I need to get back to family time. That's number one priority. But I also love working with people and just that leadership role. So I started doing some accountability work, and I presented at an extreme leadership conference in San Diego, right there in your backyard. Yeah. And I had some CEOs come up to me and go, do you have a book we like to buy? We like to roll this out to our, I was like, a book? You have no idea. I am a C student. English is my second language. I hate English. It's too complicated for me. I'm a math guy. I can figure that out.
Yeah.
That was my response. And we had a little giggle about it. But then I got home and shared it with my family, which I'll go back to that story here in a second of my son calling me out on it. But at the end of the day, what I've seen happen in a lot of organizations is they swing the pendulum. You remember we've talked about this. Too far to the right, too far to the left. We need really high margin. We have really low margin. More advertising, less advertising. More accountability, less accountability. But really what works is being consistent and something that's balanced. Yeah. And that's where Balanced IQ came into play. And balanced accountability is it. It's a accountability you can roll out. It's based on 3 Ps. And it helps you win the hearts of your people to maximize performance at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and I think it was fun too to go through that book, and obviously I knew a lot of the stories too, because a lot of it I learned firsthand, from you, and so and it was cool to kind of be able to validate it. And then I've rolled that out to my whole team, and when it came out last year or whatever. And so I think at the end of the day, that is an issue I see going to become more and more prevalent, to be honest, because I think with the younger generation, and I see it all the time, there is a sense of extreme difficulty around having difficult conversations. And so you've got, multiple generations now of younger people coming into great leadership roles who might have a ton of talent, but have a very difficult time sitting down and explaining the why behind something and holding somebody accountable. And so figuring out up front, like how to do it in a balanced way and come from the right place and explain the why makes such a huge difference. Because if you go from never having difficult conversations to all of a sudden, yelling up here, like that's going to be the worst, right? And so I would recommend for everyone listening who hasn't, go out and get the first book first, because do yourself a favor. It's something that is extremely necessary in all businesses.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, accountability equals love. And once you really understand that, you can't just go straight to yelling at people. And actually, that's something I highly encourage leaders never do. Managers will yell at people all day. Leaders don't. So leaders lead. And so you don't want to do that. So once they understand that hey, Brett, I need to give you some tough love. Is that okay? And I get your permission. Now I'm going to give you some tough love. And when I give you tough love, I'm going to leave my opinions out of it. I'm going to share facts with you, things that you've done that can give you some valuable feedback. And then once we're done, I'm going to be by your side to help you get through this. A manager does quite the opposite. Hey, I need to give you some feedback. You suck. And if you continue doing this, you're going to get fired. That's a manager. And that's what's going to happen. You're going to be pathetic. People aren't going to want to work for you. Your volume is going to continue to go down. And you're wondering why nobody wants to work with you. A leader is quite the opposite. They'll build a tribe. People will be with them. They'll follow through. And then they will also give you feedback as a leader. That's where the magic starts happening. That's where the traction starts to take off. So accountability it's here to stay. If it's more than ever, it needs it. The younger generation wants to work for companies that have a purpose, and they want to work for a company that has a purpose and that is accountable for that purpose and actually shows proof that this is the things that we were doing. They will stay with you much longer. It's not about the money. It's more about the purpose of what you are doing. And you've probably seen that in your business as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us, you alluded to it. So what happened with Riley when you came back and said you wanted to write a book?
So that was my moment of truth. And we learned so much from our kids. So Riley's 9 years old. We do this thing where I hadn't been home for a few days. So we sit at the dinner table. There's 4 of us. So my wife, Angie, Riley's 9 years old, and my daughter's 12, Carmina. So we're sitting at this really small table. The table is only about 3 by 3 feet by 3 feet. So it's pretty small. So we're sitting there and we always toast about something that was great. And I go, here's a funny thing. They asked if I have a book. How funny is that? I'm trying to make a joke, a dad joke.
Yeah.
And my son looks at me. He goes, Dad, why don't you take action? He was throwing action in my face. Because I told the boy, hey, you want to play video games and you want to get good at soccer. You keep playing video games, you're going to be really good at it. You're not going to be very good at soccer. So you need to change that. You need to take action. So he was throwing in my face that I need to take action and go write this book. And then I kind of looked at my daughter because I figured she would giggle and she's seen me write emails. She knows Dad. And so she goes, yeah, Dad, why don't you take action? And I looked at Angie and Angie's she kind of looked down oh, good luck. And I couldn't sleep that night. And I'm like, my kids just called me out.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to tell them I could write a book. And I started looking into it and I started getting intimidated. And then what I've learned from working with Dale Carlson, amazing mentor, you don't have to be the smartest in one specific topic. I'm not smart at writing books. So I went and found someone that is. I interviewed a few people. I found an amazing editor from Canada. She focuses on business books and we did a data dump of all my information. I started giving her chapters and we took baby steps. How do you eat an elephant? One small bite at a time. And we started doing this. It took a couple years where now I feel like I can whip out a book. When I say whip out a book, for me, it still takes 9 months to about a year. That's about what Champion Advantage, but it's a little faster. And I'm not as intimidated by it because I've done it once now or twice.
No, that's incredible. And I love that because as I've been doing this podcast and interviewing all these uber successful people, 25 episodes in, doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 25 stories I've now heard. And I cannot tell you how many times this idea of taking action keeps coming up. It's not a question I ask. It just in the stories people are telling about how they got there or whatever it is, it's well, I just did it. I jumped in. I didn't know. I jumped in. And I love the idea because I tell my kids the same thing all the time. Nothing's ever perfect. It'll never be perfect, like it just, but sometimes you just got to go.
Yeah.
And the people in this world that seem to be the most successful are the ones that don't let those doubts or the fears get in their way. They just overcome that and then they start.
Absolutely.
And you take one foot in front of the other, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you got a book, or you got a this, or you have a movie, or whatever it is, and it seems like that spirit is so prevalent in entrepreneurs. Absolutely. Because I think that they've understood that, no one is handing you a business like, here it is, it's perfect, go run with it. There's no such thing, So as an entrepreneur, I think you learn at a young age, like, okay, it's obstacles, it's hurdles, it's whatever, it's how fast can I pivot? And to your point earlier, with you and Matt, how can I fail fast and then figure it out and move on, which I absolutely love. So before we get into Champion Advantage and you give everyone the kind of overview on it, I do want the audience to get to know you a little bit. So I always ask a few personal stories, and, we have a million together, but what's a great, story that's entertaining that you love to tell about your career as you're coming up?
My career that I was a screw up. I made some mistakes early on. There was no question, but I learned from those mistakes. So you might have heard this story before, but when I first started at sleep training, it was only going to be temporary. I mean, I went to school for international business. I had an opportunity to go work for Chevron. I mean, I'm working for a mattress company. Who wants to do that? Right. But I fell in love with the purpose. I fell in love with the industry. The industry is amazing. Once you get in there, because I didn't know much about it, the people are just so great. 6 months into it, I had a manager position open up. My manager goes, "Don't apply for it. That store sucks. Don't do it." Everyone's like, "Don't do it." I'm like, "Well, I just thought I'm going to do it for the experience." So like, you need to be doing your job for about 5 years before you can even think about applying for a manager. I'm like, "Okay, but I'm going to try it," because that's kind of, you see how I'm going to figure it out. So you probably remember Matt Jessel.
Yeah.
So Matt Jessel, I contacted him and I went through the interview process, which was about 3 questions. And he goes, "The job's yours. You can start tomorrow." I'm like, whoa, I nailed it. Couldn't believe it. So I go, "Don't you have to call people back and let them know they didn't get the job?" He goes, "Nope, you're the one that applied. It's yours." I got it by default. I had no idea.
Nice.
So at this point, then I find out more information. This store was labeled the cemetery store. This is where your career went to die. It was a tough store. Stockton, you got good sides of Stockton, bad side. This wasn't in the up and coming side. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
I get there, the staff's not happy. And in the second month, we completely turn around, triple the store's business. We didn't get any additional advertising. We didn't get any new products. All it was how we helped and served people. We helped them fall in love with sleep again.
Yes.
So you're like, well, that's a success. No, that was a failure because I almost failed. What happened was Matt Jessel comes back a couple months later and tells Hernani, "I want to take you to lunch." I'm like, "Thought we're going to celebrate this because I'm killing it." He goes, "Yeah, you're doing good, but I just want to let you know your staff doesn't want to work with you anymore." I'm like, "What?" Talk about having that difficult conversation. He did that with me. Of course, I'm 23, really cocky, didn't believe it. Like, "No way. Staff's making more money than they ever made before. I don't buy it." He goes, "Hernani, do you know your nickname?" And I go, "Nickname? You've had some fun with my name, so I know you can get a lot of nicknames." They gave me the nickname of Hernanis. I was I was a manager. I was coming in, micromanaging every little thing all over them. They couldn't even breathe. Even though they were making the money, they were doing good. They wanted to get out of there ASAP, more than when the store was struggling. So I was able to, that was such a blessing because I learned from that. I was able to get some valuable feedback and it really helped my career so much.
Oh, that's crazy. What was that? How did you start shoveling out of it? Did you do a meeting when you got back? Did you meet with each person? What was your strategy on like, wait a minute, I got to turn this around?
Well, at first, being 23 years old, I was mad. I was pissed off. I couldn't believe my staff would do that. We're doing good. I thought they had my back. I was upset. I had some time to process it, get over the pity party. And something I've always learned from my family is there's 2 sides to every story. So why don't you get their side of what's going on? So it was a Saturday morning. I had them all there and I brought up like, "Hey, I've been told I'm not the best manager for you." Because that was what I was a manager.
Yeah.
And they kind of looked at me like, "Oh, who told you this?" You could just see the fear kicking in. I'm like, "I know I haven't been doing a good job and I'm sorry. I took the hit. I said the magic word. I'm sorry. And I want to become a better manager for you." I still use manager because I didn't know the difference between manager and leader at that time. Yep. But I asked them, I go, "What can I do more of? I want to do what I can do more of." And, it's like popcorn. When you ask your staff something, you're like, no one says anything.
Yeah.
but it's in the microwave and it just takes time and it'll start popping. And that's how it went. I got my assistant manager said something. I took a note, and then the staff was like, okay, he's not going to chew me out. And then I started getting some very good feedback, and I took notes. And then I go, okay, what can I do less of? They gave me some more feedback. I reiterated, okay, so this is what you want. That's the first lesson I learned about listening. So important to listen. Listen twice as much as you speak. And I go, okay, I'll work on this. And I really just started working on it. I started showing them the proof. A year later, they ended up giving me the best award that I've ever received from them, was the best leadership award for them. And I got that, and I was so blown away. I ended up becoming manager of the year. So it was just a cool thing, but they really helped me become a better person. I had failed, no question.
Yeah. And obviously, you started from scratch, right? From the bottom, just like same thing, right? Started the store. I had a job in Chicago that didn't work out, and I ended up back in San Diego with no job. And I'm like, wait, what am I going to do? I had really put all my eggs in this basket. And my buddy was like, well, hey, I got a job at this company called Sleep Train because they paid training. So we can get paid while we're training while we look for other jobs. And that was the plan. Oh, perfect. I'll do that. And obviously, like you, I fell in love with it and the people and all that. But I have actually a very similar story to yours, which was I also kind of lucked my way into my first manager job, because I after just a few months, I got a job after 3 months only, I got a job as an assistant manager at a store that nobody wanted at Kearney Mesa, which I think was the lowest volume store in all of the company. And I showed up with Mike Flores, our good buddy, was my DM at the time, and he shows up, and the total staff is one manager and one assistant manager. There's no staff, so it's a 2-people store. And he shows up, he's like, I got great news for you. I'm like, what? He goes, well, not only are you the ASM, you're now the manager, because the manager quit or got fired. I don't remember. And no one else wanted it. So here you go. And the downside was, though, is that because we didn't have any other people, I had to work 10 days straight by myself. And this is back when we had bell to bells. So for anyone listening who doesn't know, bell to bell in sales is a 10 to 9 shift solo. And I think on like the 6th or 7th day, I didn't even leave. I didn't even go home. I never saw a customer for 11 hours until 8:55. A lady walks in to do a return, and she's there till like 10. And I'm like, okay, this one lady saw me. I have to be back here in what seems like 3 hours. I just went upstairs. There was an adjustable bed. I put on some movie, and I just went to bed. So it was my one night. I stayed in the old Sleep Train. So claim to fame. It was awesome.
The good old days.
Good old days. So tell me, obviously that's how it started. Then you progress eventually, all the way up into becoming the president, of Sleep Train. And at the time, Mattress Firm had obviously acquired Sleep Train. So throughout that journey, tell us if you can recall, 1 or 2 stories around, what about some massive failures once you were in those real higher leadership positions? What struggles did you have, and how did you kind of get through it once the stakes were that high?
Yeah. So once you get to that level and you realize when you're working in a store, it's easier to lead that group of people, but the more you go, you need to get out of the way of your talent. You got to give them a little bit of guidance, but you've got to give them ownership. So for example, we want to raise margin. That was always a topic, right? We need to improve margin. Okay, we need to improve margin. This is what we got to do. If I said that, guess what the output's going to be? Not very good. Some people may do well, but most of them won't. But if I go to the team and I'd go, okay, we need to improve margin. What do you think we can improve margin by? I already kind of have an idea what the number is in the back of my mind, but I get them to work through it, challenge them. And then we go, okay, so what do we need to do? What are like the top 3 things we need to do? Not 20 things, because, there's things at the bottom of the list that just barely moves the needle. But normally you got 3 to 5 things that really will move the needle. And then once you can get focused and you get their commitment, now let's go execute. This is what we're going to do. And we break it up in small chunks. So that is a key. Once the more you move up in the company, is you really have to be a better listener and really listen to your team and give your talent that opportunity to take ownership, and then get out of their way and just praise them. And the more you praise them, even those small wins, it becomes very, very contagious. Even your bottom performers moves up to the average. So
yeah, and what
gives you a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you mentioned it, but 2008, 2009, during that big crash, I know just from hearing stories from, Dale and some of the other executives that, there was times there when it was looking really grim. I know there was covenants were due to the bank, Wells Fargo. There was, obviously real estate had plummeted. What was that like? When here you are, things are great. A couple of previous years, you're shooting up the chart. Now you're running all of sales. What was that like when we were going through that? And how were you able to get everybody moving in the same direction, even though it was such a crazy time?
Yeah, it wasn't just me, it was our entire leadership team. When that happened, it was October of 2000. I could still remember it, to where the market collapsed. Lehman Brothers went down, and you just all of a sudden there's a lot of panic. People aren't going to spend money. We just saw what happened with COVID here back in March of last year, right? So all of a sudden nobody's coming to the stores, and we still have payroll to make. We still have everything we got to do. And we had some money in the bank, but it quickly started to diminish. So much that we were like, okay, we need to take the hit here and not get paid. So we had some reduction in our pay and kind of move some stuff. And we wanted to make sure our staff got paid first. So we were living as a company, paycheck to paycheck. What I meant by is every paycheck, we were just trying to get enough money in there. Sometimes we didn't pay our vendors right on time, but we really want to make sure we never missed a beat with our team. We also wanted to make sure we didn't lay off anyone if we didn't have to for that type of thing. We didn't know how long it was going to go. We did do some right sizing, so we had to make some adjustments there. But the key thing that we did there is we took the hit as a company. Here's a situation, and let our team know this is what it is, our leadership team. And then we go, we need to stop the bleeding. And we got some feedback from them. And it went all the way down to the district managers. And then as you probably remember, you were in the leadership development team. You guys did some amazing things. And we just started to save a lot of money. And the other key thing is we listened as an executive group. We thought about maybe holding back on advertising because we advertised a lot. I was in the meeting and I said, we should reduce our advertising. Dale said, absolutely not. This is not a time you reduce your advertising, which I'm glad he was so forth. But what I didn't want to do is go chasing that $99, let's advertise price.
Yeah.
We found out that customers that were walking through the door, we call them guests. Our guests that are walking through the door were there to spend money. So we went all in on those power bases, movable bases. We had the Fab Five, as you probably remember. So we really increased our ticket average and started to show value in our advertising. And that just helped us from the expenses that we saved, everything. We came out of it so much stronger. A year later, we created the ESOP, so we created even more ownership. We showed more proof to our team that they truly are owners, and Dale went out and did that and gave them that ownership. And in 2014, as you saw, we had an opportunity to exit at the highest multiple ever in the furniture industry. And we're so blessed. It was our entire team that did that. So yeah. It was dealing with that adversity, and it was such a team effort.
No, I love that backstory. So obviously, those experiences and a bazillion others, lead you to where you are today, right? And obviously you've gone through releasing Balanced Accountability, which, became a bestseller and had a ton of success. So what was the backstory behind Champions Advantage? So what was the motivation behind writing it? And then give everyone the kind of 10,000 foot view of what they're going to get by reading it.
Absolutely. So Balanced Accountability, that's always been my passion, is talking about accountability in the workplace where more organizations stay away from it. So it's how your team can fall in love with accountability to where you start winning hearts, as I mentioned before. I was supposed to present to a company in Tampa, Florida, that were going through mergers and acquisitions. I've done a few of those, 32 to be exact. And so here I am about to present the day before, and I'm meeting with the executive team, just trying to iron out a few things. This is March 20th, as you recall. March 20th, 20 was bad. Things were like, we got to shut down. They're looking at, they're going to have to close some of their stores. They are possibly going to have to furlough some people. They're going through this whole merger. It's too late. They can't get out of the deal. And the CEO goes, we can't talk about accountability. There's no way. Even though he's never heard it's very motivational when I talk about accountability. Yeah. He had never heard of it. So he was like, absolutely, we can't do it. Do you have anything else? And I go, well, I could talk about how change equals improvements and how you can change the mindset. And he goes, perfect. So went out there, and that's where they called it the champion mindset.
Yeah.
And we did that presentation, hit it out of the park. It was really a pivot overnight. Yeah. But I already had a few things in my tool chest that I could talk about. And we got in there and the team really rallied, very similar to what we did with Stop the Bleeding exercise, where the team's like all in, and they came out of it so much stronger as well. But that ended up becoming my talk throughout COVID. It was talking about the champion advantage, how you can have two people that have the exact same situation occur to them, but one of them is going to come out ahead. And what is that? And that's where it comes into maximizing your controllables. You've probably heard the story about the bison and the cow. I'll share it with you in case some of your listeners haven't. The bison's been around for over 13 million years. The cow's a domestic part of the bison that's only been around for about a little over 10,000 years. Still a long time. But when a storm comes in, a cow sees it and it runs away from it. Where a bison, it's been around for so long and it's on the prairie and it's survived all these multiple years, is because it sees the storm, it goes right at it, because it knows once it gets through that storm, it'll be done with it faster and it can move on. Where the cow is just kind of, uh-oh, here it comes, doom and gloom. And that's really where you get into the champion advantage, is dealing with that, changing your mindset, maximizing your controllables, finding the opportunities that you don't even see right now, and finding your win. And what WIN stands for is what's important now. What do I truly need to do right now to become successful?
Yes, I love that. And I love there's a lot of things I like about this book. So I'll give you some plugs here, and
Awesome.
then you can send me the check after.
Okay.
So the first off, right? So here's the book. What I love about it is it's like the perfect business length book, right? Because I read this book fast. I think you sent me an electronic copy, so who knows? Like, I didn't know pages, but I think I read it in 2 nights, like quick. Books that are so long, you're like, oh, just give me the meat, give me the good stuff, and that's what this book does. But the second thing I love about it is every chapter ends with a take action, and it tells, as a reader, hey, do these 3 things or do this thing to improve or to learn the concept or put it into action, which is really cool. So what was the idea behind having like a takeaway or an action point, A, and then B, around just making this thing very bite-sized? It's very, like I said, you can go through this thing in a couple of days.
Yeah, and that's the key. So I believe in focus groups a lot. So when I started putting it together, and I started sending out chapters, I have a select group of people that know me and people that have no idea who I am. And I would just send them the book. I get feedback. I love feedback. And one of the things that came back, they go, we love the length of it. We love the chapters are fairly quick, because I can stop it on a chapter. I can finish it. Most books, so I always ask them, is this chapter 1, is this something you want to read more of? 100% of the people that I send it out to, a little over 200 people, said, absolutely, I will read more after chapter 1. Halfway through the book, will you finish the book? Many times they skipped that middle part and didn't send me until the final. So that was ecstatic, because I wanted to see if people would stay engaged with it. So what was it? It was short. It was sweet, to the point, just like you talked about. So more and more business books are headed in that direction. And then I also learned is, okay, what are your takeaways? What are people going to do? So if someone rolls this out to their team, you just have your team read a chapter, and then you meet with them and, okay, let's talk about those 3 questions. What are some things you're going to do? Okay, next meeting, let's do another chapter. The chapters are 5 to 10 minutes, but it really helps them stay on course on things that they need to do, instead of, okay, I'm done with this chapter, let me move on. And by that time they read a book, then they move on to another book, and then they don't implement anything. So that's the take action. I think I get that for my son. Balanced Accountability has that too. Organizations love that as well, because that's the feedback I've gotten with, okay, what are the questions that I need to do? And I keep it short, 3, not like 20 of them, because then I'm turned off.
Yeah, you got to make it so, the main things come across. I do a thing where they're over there, I could grab it, but I do with like, when I get big books, I actually do colored little Post-it, those little thumb Post-its. So I'll do like a red Post-it for something that was really important. And then maybe, like, it depends on the book, but like a yellow Post-it for like a funny thing or something I wanted to reference. And then throughout the reading a book, I'll put these little thumbnails in, because at the end of the day, I've got like 60 or 70 of these business books. I can barely remember them. I've read them over, the last 10, 15 years. But if I want to go back to it now, I can actually just go to right to the couple parts that I was like, oh, this is really cool. This was good. I remember that I like that. Because otherwise I get lost, and the reason I like this, one of the reasons I like this book too, is, you teach and you comment through telling these micro stories. So it's Nelson Mandela, it's Lou Holtz, it's Walt Disney, it's, Richard Branson, so it's people that we all know and respect. And then you hear these cool backstories. because I don't know if it's just if it's everybody, but I know a lot of people learn through story. I mean, that's why I do this podcast and I have you tell stories, because if you tell me a really gripping story, about your time in 2008, I can remember that and be like, hey, what were those key takeaways? If you tell me the 5 things you have to do in Akron, forget it. Yeah, I don't know. So whereas I went through the book and was like, oh, this is cool, I didn't know that. Oh, and now I remember the story, and then it can remember the takeaway.
It's great. 100%. Yeah. It's not a traditional business book. Some business books are models, and you grab and it's got, okay, do this, and then you got to round this. All of them use their round circles over each other. And then you got to get this middle part, or you got to do this. For me, it's baloney, because in the real world, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work. These are the circles. This is how it is. You can get the visual, but the real world is really by you just taking action, knowing some things, and going out there and failing quickly, and then making some improvements and being very successful through it. So don't believe in the lottery ticket. So I just had this conversation with my son, because we were talking about the lottery ticket, and some people are so focused on, I'm going to win the lottery, and when I win the lottery, it's going to change my life. Well, I personally don't know anyone that has won a significant amount of money. Let's just say over 100,000 or $1 million. I don't know anyone that's done that. I know the math. The math is 72% of people that win over $1 million in the lottery end up broke. They don't make it. They actually go out and spend the money because they don't know how to treat it. But I know so many people that are multimillionaires, billionaires, because of the hard work that they put into all that time. It's called compound interest. All that compound interest of my work I did early is now starting to pay big dividends later on. And they all have, as you're starting to find out doing the podcast, they all have these interesting stories that they failed and they learned from it, and then they got successful.
No, absolutely.
That's the secret sauce.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that, and, on that same vein, what would you say, since this, obviously this season is, highlighting these different amazing authors and getting to know you all better. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are listening that have this burning idea, or this, this concept or this story that they're like, I got to get out to the world. And they maybe been thinking about doing a book. What lessons did you learn, launching Balanced Accountability, and then now Champions Advantage? So you got 2 books under your belt. What things did you change? What did you wish you knew first, for the first book? What advice could you give, kind of people who are aspiring writers?
Yeah. Don't listen to your internal voice. We all have it. That invoice of, hey, Hernani, English is your second language. No one's going to read your book. You don't know how to dot an I or cross a T. You don't know how to spell these words. You got to grab a dictionary. I had all those words going through my head. But what I learned is those are just words. And those words in your head, you can just let it go out your ears, but you have to control that. People can't make you feel the way you do. You make yourself feel that way. You just got to let that go, and then start acting on things you want to do. Think about the outcomes of stuff you want. So stop listening to your internal voice. All of you have an amazing story, but you need to stop dreaming. Yes, I said it. Stop dreaming. Your whole life you've been told dream, 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 dream. No, stop dreaming and start doing. Start taking action and go do what you want to do. I always bring up Riley because him and we have these really good conversations. I told Riley this. I go, dude, stop dreaming and take action. And he's like, okay, Dad, that doesn't make any sense. What if there's a homeless guy and the homeless guy wants to go to the moon? He can't go to the moon. I'm like, why not? And he goes, because he's homeless. I'm like, okay, maybe he can't, but let's talk about what are some things that he needs to do to get out? Well, he needs to stop being homeless. Okay, that could be a step. What's another step he could do? Well, he just needs to get off the street. Okay, there might be some mental illness. There's things there. There's a story of why he is homeless, unfortunately. But yes, if he wants to, he's not going to go tomorrow, but he can start taking action. He could start doing things towards his dream to eventually end up going to the moon. Richard Branson was labeled, he has a learning disability. He can't learn, but he just went to the moon. The guy has this Virgin Brands. He's got 10 different companies doing north of $1 billion. He doesn't know how to fly a plane. He doesn't know how to do that, but he knows how to surround himself, give them something that they can really motivate themselves to go do. And then he gives them a goal and they go and execute. The guy has a secret sauce. I know he's made some things early on in his career. He made some mistakes like we all do. He was a Hernanis just like I was, but now he's really moving and getting some traction on things that he's doing.
Yeah, no doubt. So I know we're butting up against the time here, and I want to give you an opportunity to let people know. So if somebody's listening, what's the best way they can connect with you? How can they connect with Balance IQ? How can they get the book? Like, just give us the whole Hernani pitch right now.
Absolutely. But first, I was going to ask you, anyone that wants to write a book or anyone wants to do that, or if they want a different perspective, why don't you just give me a call? So I'm going to give you my cell number. And this sometimes blows people crazy. Like, he's giving us, yeah, my cell number, 916-717-3299. I'm going to say it again, 916-717-3299. I'm here to serve you. So if you want to write a book, I'll guide you and get you some different things. I have a person from Angola, Africa that read my book. He is now working on his book, his own personal book about attitude. So I can't wait to hear about that. But it was stuff that I kind of helped mentor him with that. But if you want to find more about any of my books, you can go, you can buy it anywhere, Walmart, Target, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Apple. Just Google my name or Google Balanced Accountability or Champion Mindset. If you want to get a hold of me directly, go to balancediq.com. So it's balancediq.com.
Yes. And I think the good news is that myself and everyone else who knows you can validate that, you are speaking the truth. So if someone does reach out, I know that, you'll be more than happy to help them and guide them in any way they can. And for any organizations out there looking to, now that we're rolling a little bit backwards with this Delta strain, but hopefully next year, we start bouncing out of it and you can start cruising around and speaking again, because I know you're one of the best public speakers around. And I think that, as we mentioned, these concepts, I think, are just going to become more and more valuable as so many of these new companies that started even during COVID, they're starting out, they've got all these people who are going to be in these high level leadership roles that they weren't in a year or 2 or 3 ago. And they're going to need to know, how do I do balanced accountability? How can I do this from a place of love? How do I have these conversations? And I would say, last thing I would ask you is, just because you were someone who taught me this, I can remember early in my career struggling when I had to let people go. I felt it, it would bother me. I would stay up all night. I feel so awful. And something that you said was actually has always held, I've always kept it, was yeah, that makes sense, which was, hey, as long as you did everything in your role to give them all the tools and everything they need to be successful in their job, then you should have no problem, telling someone that, hey, this XYZ, and this is why you're being let go. And you said, as long as you've done everything in your role, they'll never give you pushback. They'll generally apologize. And I remember thinking, that just sounds too easy. But the reality is that has played out in my entire career. The people that I've had to let go, generally 9 times out of 10 feel sorry and apologize, because it's hey, we did this, we worked on this, here was the parameter, remember, there's the thing, all this stuff we did, and then this is the result. Whereas people do have the right to be upset if they walk in and you didn't do everything that you needed to. You didn't give them everything that they needed to, and so that's something I've always held dear, and so how, what was the messaging behind that, and how did you kind of come up with those concepts around really giving people the why?
Yeah, so it's no question, it's difficult. To this day, it's still difficult for me. I've probably done over 1,000 different terminations when it comes down to that. Early on, I was that manager where it's okay, let's just get rid of this person and let me just replace it and get someone else in here that's going to listen to me. That was kind of my attitude. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was naive. I was immature. I didn't know. But once I really understood that everybody has challenges, I was a Hernazi. I should have been fired the way I was conducting myself. But I became very loyal to the company once I learned some different things that I could make some improvements. So if you truly love somebody as a leader, your job is to help others become greater than themselves. So if you truly love doing that and serving other people, you want to make sure you help them come out of it. I get so much more satisfaction seeing somebody that I had to give tough love to, and then they make improvements and they become very loyal within the organization. So that's why we did, a lot of different things. We had Back on Track program. We wanted to make sure we really helped some of these performers that were once top performers, but something happened. Sometimes it was external, but now we wanted to give them the love, get them back up. And that's really helped. So give them love, give them tough love, be there for them, pick up that phone call when they need you most, check in with them, and they will normally not let you down. There are some people, it is time for them to move on, and you got to let them go.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, man. I know, because obviously I loved it personally, but everyone out there, go get Champions Advantage, reach out to Hernani. He will respond. And if you need any guidance, he will be there. But get this book. It's a game changer. And once again, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Keep changing the world. You're making a
Hey,
big
man.
difference in a lot of people's lives. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.